can record it.
This will be just sharing internally with the other group so that they can watch it. All right, it is
Okay.
recording. And go ahead and jump into the goal. And if you want to transition from the goal to the situation, you have basically 6 minutes. So the whole thing. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Britt. Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate this opportunity to talk to you. I'm very excited. So the goal of describing the situation to you is for me to learn how to build effective consensus and clarity around this challenge. And it's an internal challenge. It's very much a business kind of operations challenge. So basically with my company, kind of broadly, we're stuck in what I would call the founder saga. If there's 3 stages to the founder saga, we're stuck in stage number 2. My organization is 65 years old. We run residential care centers and do community empowerment programs in Latin America, basically from Mexico all the way down to Bolivia. It's an amazing story. We were founded by a charismatic priest who died, I think, about 20 years ago. And so we're stuck trying to transition beyond his leadership and become, professionally managed and professionally led. And I've been in the organization 2.5 years. So what I'm experiencing, and I'm director of communications, I report to the executive director, and he has a board that he reports to. What I'm experiencing is that historically, very much with a founder-led organization, is a very patriarchal management style. The priest, who was a founder, would make a decision. There wasn't negotiation or discussion. People would go and do it. And so we're transitioning and how to, still we're trying to figure out how to manage as a team. And what I'm finding is that I was brought in to really drive, I'm ending up in this situation of being kind of the lead change maker, right? My executive director has recognized that I have a lot of corporate experience that doesn't exist internally because we promote from within, and he's really taken advantage of my expertise to drive a lot of change, which has put me in these very tense, kind of awkward situations of kind of leading people to places that they don't understand where they're going or why. And so my current situation is I'm going to build a marketing function. We don't have a marketing function, and we have a fundraising crisis. And so as I do this, I'm very concerned that actually trying to explain to the leadership team and the other stakeholders in the organization what a marketing function does inside an organization and how and why it can be effective and what it needs in order to be successful is proving very challenging. I'm in this cycle where my first approach was to explain. I'm a master PowerPoint designer. Explain, present, people ask questions. But I was finding that even though there seemed to be understanding and clarity in the meeting, a month later, it was almost like we were going back to the beginning, and it wasn't holding. The decisions and the agreement that we were reaching in those moments were not holding to the next decision point. And so I changed my tactic to, asking people to go out and investigate on their own, because we have a mix of languages in the organization. So what I'm finding is that people are not kind of invested enough or curious enough to self-teach and investigate on their own and ask their own questions. And so we could come back into the conversation and maybe have a sharing of questions. And so we could grow and learn together that way. That's not really working either. Right now, my boss is super confident that I can carry this project off, and I feel that I can, and I will. I'm continuing to encounter these kind of expertise gaps within the organization, and I'm working around them. But ultimately, for the longevity of the organization, I'm really beginning to fear that I'm building a thing that will not survive past me leaving the organization, because it's not truly becoming kind of entrenched. I may be being a little bit dire, once it gets up and running and it starts to work and I can show that it's working, maybe I'll get more buy-in, but that definitely makes it harder to launch this piece. But in the meanwhile, we're starting to encounter kind of some critical path decisions, like setting up our accounting practices to hook into this new marketing department so that the money actually does flow from marketing to fundraising, that those donor leads and such are handled in a way that we can ultimately increase our fundraising revenue. I'm beginning to doubt that those critical kind of expertise gaps are going to keep us from being able to be effective. And ultimately, coming back to my peers and just asking them, what is it that you understand? What is it that you agree with? And I really feel like this is Gia's project, and trying to emphasize the fact that I want to create a solution. I will change the solution to fit what we agree with, but I'm not getting enough engagement in order to build a solution that fits us. It's turning out to build a solution that fits me and my expertise. Again, I know it will work, but I don't have confidence that it fits the organization because I don't have enough engagement from the organization to build something to fit us. And I'm just kind of stuck right now. I'm really concerned. I've talked to my executive director about this. He's admitted that he still doesn't understand truly at a core level the difference between fundraising and marketing. And I really respect him for being honest. But again, I came back and say, we've been talking about this for a year. So what do I need to do and what do you need to do to answer that question for yourself? Because it's not because I haven't explained it. I'll stop there.
Great. Thanks, Gia. Okay, so now peer consultants, we have about 6 minutes for asking questions of Gia. And so Gia, that's also just for you to manage that 6 minutes because it's not a lot of time. So whoever has a question for Gia, and again, trying your best to make this an open, honest question that's perhaps revealing something that information that you need as peer consultants to be of most service.
Oh, yeah, Betty here.
Hi, Betty.
Go ahead, Betty.
Yeah, hi. You can't see me because I'm having a problem with my network, so it's only audio. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing with us this rather. What can I say? It seems like you are being interested with to deliver, you said you are the change maker. And so it really looks like a very big responsibility because your boss seems to have a lot of confidence that you can do this, which is a good point, I think, for you to think about. Maybe you are really capable. But now to understand further, you mentioned, for me, you mentioned that the organization is in stage 2. And I just want to hear a little bit more about what this stage 2 is before I can actually process further what really needs to happen in this stage.
Awesome. So yeah, I can give you a kind of a short example. So if you have my understanding, an organization that's founded by a founder, someone has an idea, entrepreneurial spirit, and typically it's a family business, for example. So the business is family-led, family-managed, right? A father establishes a business and his sons and daughters run it. As you evolve, the business gets older, it grows, it continues to be family-managed, family-led rather, but it's professionally managed. You get more people in with expertise to help run the business. And then eventually after that founder passes or dies or the organization continues to grow, it becomes professionally led and professionally managed. So right now we're stuck in stage 2. Even though our founder has passed, we have people that work very closely with him and they are carrying on his legacy in a very live and vibrant way. We're struggling to get in professional management to help us grow, but that founder kind of leadership is still not aligned with the professional management to keep us from getting to stage 3, which is true financial stability. For me, my goal for the organization is financial stability so we can continue to deliver services.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. Now I'm in perspective, but other people can ask other questions as well. Thank you.
Sam, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much, Gia. I mean, I can totally relate to your situation. It is something that I have experienced and I'm experiencing. So I felt like you're telling my story. So, but having said that, specifically to the initiative that you are running, I think for me, I would want to draw insights on how your initiative aligns with the I would call it the priorities of the current management. You know, how do they align with the priorities of the current management? I totally understand the battles around founder philosophy and legacy. And then number two is how far and wide you've cast the net to rally champions and supporters of your cause as you implement this.
That's both really good questions. As far as aligning with the priorities of the organization, that's a difficult question. It's a good question, Sam. I find us to be in such dire financial situation that is very much the focus is emergency. It's what I call firefighting. We're always fighting fires. And we lack the ability to have that long-term vision, because solving a fundraising challenge like this, it has to be a long-term vision. It has to be a big idea, right? So it's been hard to draw people's attention to a 3-year, 5-year scope, because this home might close in 6 months. And I think that's limiting me being able to get people's attention, honestly. Casting the net, that's an interesting question. You know what, the challenge I'm having, and this was actually an example that came up, there are a lot of stakeholders to talk to. But again, this lack of clarity and consensus, I admitted to my group this morning, with the people that I talk to, I'm not sure who it is I need to inform and from whom I need consent, right? If you follow the RACI model, responsible, accountable, consulted, informed. And the stakeholders I talk to, I think because these are big ideas of a long-term range, they are also not sure what they're supposed to be giving me so that I can move forward. You know, I thought I knew, but when I really got down to it, I realized, you know, I'm explaining to you what this idea is, but I'm not actually sure what I'm supposed to give you and what you're supposed to give me in return. So it's another example of the multiple layers of lack of clarity of how to work together.
Great. Thank you. Okay, so we are going to enter into the quiet reflection period. This is 2 minutes. Remember, we are 100% in service to Gia here. So any thoughts, feelings, images, words that are coming up for you as you sit with what Gia has shared so far, please capture them. And as soon as our 2 minutes are up, I'll let you know. But what's coming up for you? Maybe it's connected to something that's experienced in your past. Maybe there are significant questions or gaps, information you don't know yet. Both presenter and consultants will do this. All right, we're going to enter into the discussion part of the process. Gia, I'm going to ask you to turn off your camera. And now, as peer consultants, we are just talking to each other. Gia is not here right now, although Gia is there to take notes and just, observe what's going on. So this is an open discussion with us as peer consultants about what Gia has presented, how she's presented it, anything that's coming up for you. and we have 6 minutes for this conversation. So whoever's ready, go ahead and jump in. Go ahead, Brian. Brian, your mic doesn't seem to be working. Let's see. Maybe while you're... Try now? Not quite yet? Okay, see if you can figure that out. I'll go to Fatma, and then we'll come back to you. Go ahead, Fatma.
Okay. Thank you. So from my listening carefully to Gia's presentation, it looks like for her, she feels that the organization has been successful by being successful on the marketing in terms of fundraising campaign, but I'm trying to reflect and think, what are the indicators or measures for the successful organization? Is it only for fundraising? If the fundraising campaign has been successful, does it mean the organization is successful? Or like there's like some, like I think for her that's done, but like in broader terms, like there are other indicators or measures which might bring to a successful organization. That's what I've been thinking.
Great. Brian, do you want to try now? Still nothing. Maybe let's keep working on that. You can also put it into the chat if there's something, but Kristen, go ahead.
Sure. So there are a few different themes that I heard. One that I really appreciated and actually wrote down was when Gia said, I can and I will. And I really loved the agency that Gia had when she articulated that, right? She is determined, yet there's a number of external factors that are making this challenging. And I tried to think through like what those confluence of challenges were. And I think, one of the things that I heard was that there's this shift in the way decision making is happening. It's been sort of a bit of a patriarchal, the leader makes the decisions, everybody has to agree. And now there's a transition point, and it seems like the organization doesn't really know how to make decisions together yet. And that's a learning process and maybe some sort of muscle that needs to be built. And perhaps that's sort of why it seems like maybe people are on board at some point, and then maybe later on people didn't agree with, or maybe there's a different idea of where the process is among those who are participating. And seems like it's actually more of like a symptom of sort of not knowing how to make decisions together quite yet. And then I also sort of hear the stress of like the financial situation of the organization and sort of this tension between short-term stress of the financial situation versus sort of long-term of trying to build, I think it was like a 3 to 5 year strategy, which actually made me wonder whether, even if that strategy, as strategies do generally need to be sort of like longer term, is it maybe possible to focus on the most immediate parts of it? Might that feel more valuable in the beginning, and then does that serve as a hook, not the type of hook we say, like an engagement, a way of engaging people into the larger process, to sort of start with the short term. So those were some things that were coming up for me. Over.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sam, I see your hand. We have about 90 seconds. So
yeah, so for me, I could pick change. And I think Jia is driving a fundamental change within the organization. It is not only timely, but it is actually not, they can't do without it. Two, there's resistance pegged on legacy and culture. And there's also uncertainty in terms of the team that she's worked directly with to buy into her idea. So there's transition, and obviously, I think Gia is trying to challenge the beliefs, the norms, and perceptions within the organization. And I think Gia can do better in rallying support and champions of her cause without giving up. I think I'll encourage her to press on.
Great, thank you. Okay, so we're going to enter part 2 of the process. Gia, we'll invite you back in. So this first discussion period is 6 minutes. Then we have quiet reflection for 1 minute, and then discussion as we just did for 5 minutes. So this whole round is about 12 minutes. So this is an open discussion, so people can ask questions of Gia. Gia, you may want to just respond to what you heard. If there's perhaps any misguided assumptions around what you've shared thus far, if you need to course correct or things like that, this is a good time to do that. But we have 6 minutes. Go ahead, Gia. You can start.
I'll respond to some of the things I heard. So Fatima, really good question. What are the indicators and measures for marketing success? I'd say the organization isn't at that point yet. I mean, to actually have a concept of marketing and know what's measured, and I can present key performance indicators and they won't, there's no basis there to set them on. I will say that, you know, where we are now, we have a collection of fundraising offices that fund our work in Latin America. So this is Europe, this is Latin America. The fundraising offices over time have been raising less and less money, which is why there's an urgent need to find a new way to raise funds. Those fundraising offices in Europe don't have a solution for how or why they're raising less money. Like they don't actually have a vision of how to solve that problem, which makes it even more dire. We've got to fill the gap. So I think, Kristen, your comment, I mean, maybe reframing the project as an urgent, immediate need versus a long-term need might be a way to do that. The struggle I have is, you know, not calling out those European fundraising offices for having failed or not doing their role. I mean, basically, they have one job. This is it. And we have this situation where they're deflecting to the program countries to say, if you ran your programs differently, we could fundraise, which I think is not helpful. Part of it is kind of, I'm entering in the middle of that conversation. I'm not taking either side. I'm just saying, let's do something different. Like, you don't have to answer that question between the two of you. Let's just go do something else. Sam, I really, you know, finding a way to rally support and champions for the cause in a different way, I think would definitely help. I ultimately feel, though, I'm lacking the strong support of my executive director. I mean, honestly, I feel like he supports me, he believes in me, but he's actually disengaged. It's kind of like, Gia's going to do it, I'm going to go worry about this thing over here. But I need him actively engaged in helping me rally this. And I'll stop there.
Great. Any questions, comments, thoughts? We have about 4 minutes in this open period. Kristen, go ahead.
Yeah, I would ask Gia, do you have a vision or even ideas around what that active engagement from your CEO would look like?
I need him to know the difference between fundraising and marketing. Just, I mean, seriously, like, and yeah. He's wonderful. We have a great relationship. And I've said that. Mm-hmm. Like, I actually said, like, maybe he's a native Spanish speaker. Maybe, like, if you could have someone explain it in Spanish, because, I mean, he's high fluency, but I can't figure out why this isn't going through. I think it's ultimately because it doesn't seem as important. But I'll add that this project is actually in the previous strategic plan. I didn't invent it. It came to my department. No one was doing it. And my boss said, can you do this? I said, are you sure? It's really big. I think it was actually in the previous strategic plan, but they didn't realize how big of a change they had put in the previous plan. Which, to me, there's a history of lack of clarity at the leadership level. So.
Go ahead, Jigyasa. And also, Gia, there are some questions in the chat. So go ahead, Jigyasa.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, Gia. I think I was also very strongly experiencing your own voice and agency and belief that you'll get through this. And the question that was coming into my mind was, how are you communicating this need? So you've shared there is a need where you're not feeling as supported by the director as much as you would like. But I'm wondering is, how are you communicating that need and ensuring that it gets fulfilled?
That's a good question. So it's one-on-one conversation. You know, we have really good live dialogue And we have a lot of WhatsApp messages that we pass back and forth. So it is kind of this live verbal dialogue that we're sharing. And he is listening. He's hearing me. It's just I don't know what I'm missing to actually get, again, the verbal agreement in the conversation to turn into action, committed action on the part of the other person. Is follow up. And I'll give you a really quick example. So I'm building a website now as part of this marketing initiative. And what I'm finding is that the lack of expertise across the organization keeps drawing me into other buckets. So while I'm working on the actual website, I keep getting in these conversations about our accounting structure, which I've said very clearly I don't want to be in. Like, I can inform, I can consult, I know what your problem is, I can give you advice on it, but I am not an accountant. I've never dealt with financial matters in Mexico. You shouldn't actually be relying on me as your primary source of information. But Gia, I know you can give us good advice. Can you come to this meeting? Can you come to this meeting? It's like, actually, I do not want to. I have to build this website. But I keep getting drawn in to the parts where, I have an opinion about everything, but it's really, I think, undermining my credibility in the organization that I keep having an opinion about things that I ought not have an opinion on.
Great. Okay, so now we have 1 minute of quiet reflection. What is coming up for you? This most recent round has yielded some new insights, new perspectives. As we are 100% here in service to Gia, what are you hearing? What are you hearing her say that maybe she's not hearing herself say?
Are we supposed to comment?
No, this is still quiet reflection.
Okay.
So we have just a few more seconds and then we'll go into our discussion. Okay, so Gia, you can turn your camera off for this round of discussion. It's just 5 minutes. So what are we seeing, feeling, thinking about the situation thus far? Fatma, I see your hand. Did you want to say something?
Yeah. Yeah, so for me, I think Gia has what she wants to do, she wants to have only the limited boundaries on what she wants to concentrate and focus on, only on her professional and area of focus. But the organization, they might have good intention with her. Maybe they want her to grow, and maybe they want her, maybe in the future, to be the CEO. That's why they invite her in other meetings which are not of her professional, like the accounting meeting or the finance discussion meeting. Because in order for you to grow and be the boss or be like the director of organization, you need to have the capability of supporting other departments. So maybe that's what I think. So she should be open in learning with other departments. That's what I think, and I feel.
Okay, thank you, Fatma. Who else? Yeah, Jigasa, please.
Yeah, I think what's coming up for me is, again, around the communication of needs and setting boundaries. And while I'm hearing that there is like some sort of communication to share that I already have X things to do and Y things to get at, but I'm wondering how clear that communication is, how urgent that communication looks like. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Sam, please.
Yeah, I think also, yeah, what For me, I think you've identified a gap and you are trying to fill it, which is really brave.
Pam, try to talk. Don't talk to Gia. Talk to us.
Yes, I think Gia has found a gap which she's trying to fill, is indeed brave. But I think she needs to make the change process a bit more sequential and also ensures that everybody is clear on what her intention is. So as part of next steps, I would recommend a deeper reflection on why there could be some resistance, or also a reflection to identify her supporters, her champions, and the bystanders, and work out ways of convincing them to buy into our initiative. Over.
Yeah, it strikes me, of course, I'm a peer consultant in this too. So it strikes me that one of the real challenges here is that perhaps she may be confusing what is a very difficult cultural issue and approaching that with some technical fixes. Like if we create a process for communication or we do this or that I don't know that a better process is going to help get at underneath some of the cultural challenges around some of the embedded patriarchy or the role of the executive director or the way the executive director has typically been positioned within the organization. And so, for all of us, I think sometimes we can point to those technical solutions as being something we can put our finger on, but then ultimately when things don't change, we recognize that these are deeper cultural things, right? And it doesn't have to be an either or thing, of course. We have 1 more minute in this discussion, if anyone would like to share. Kristen, please.
Sure. There's something that is sort of coming up to me in the relationship with the CEO who Gia reports to. And to me, it feels like perhaps there's a bit of a tension in the sense that Gia has described him as being very supportive, and it sounds as though they have a positive working relationship and fairly open communication. Yet, I'm getting the sense that Gia needs certain things from the CEO, and I think is making those requests, although I might be wrong about that. But it sounds like certain requests have been made, yet he's sort of not responding to those requests. And I'm a bit, I don't know, that to me that feels like something to get into a bit more. I'm a bit uncomfortable with that dynamic, to be honest. There's a tension for me there.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, we'll invite Gia back in. So we begin our next round of the consulting. Again, another 12 minutes. Discussion, quiet reflection, and then more discussion. So this is 6 minutes. Gia, you can start. Anything that you want to clarify or that questions that have come up. And again, this is an open conversation wherever it goes. Okay, go ahead, Gia.
This is awesome. I'm excited. It's hard for me to talk because you've given me so much food for thought. Sam, making the change process more sequential and really focusing on supporters and champions. The process of cultivating that support will help me clarify why other people might not be receptive, right? It's kind of a generative process, right? So I think I could benefit from clearly focusing on that. Diyasa, I think definitely setting some boundaries. And I think the idea that I'm talking to my executive director, it should be working. I mean, clearly it's not. So maybe there is something there that's missing, either urgency or clarity or really clear commitment, drilling down, which I think links to Kristen, your comment. I think you're right. Something's amiss there. Like the relationship might be warm and friendly, but ultimately either my needs are not being served or his needs are not being served, and something is falling through. And you can't get distracted by the friendliness that's kind of there because the goal of the conversation is missing for me, certainly. I will read the book that you recommended, Sam. That looks like a really good suggestion. Fatma, this is a good comment. Maybe people want me to stretch. So it's a political thing, right? Because it's politics, it's management. I think there are definitely people that have feelings about my executive director. There's definitely tension about him being the next in line as successor to this charismatic priest leader. I try to be really careful not to enter into that. I have no desire to be a CEO. I love being a marketer. I think I'm really good at it, and it makes me truly happy. But I can definitely see people are happy to apply what I have to offer to various problems, especially because they're fires, they're urgent. So everyone needs to put their skills to this problem right now. I do feel I can sometimes get drawn by people that have other views about where the organization can go, which is a whole nother issue. So very helpful input. Thank you, everyone. I didn't see any questions to clarify. And Britt, absolutely. I think I'm applying technical fixes, my process-oriented brain. Like let's pick one of these 3 solutions to this problem, right? I'll pick this solution, but there are definitely cultural issues that are deep, and they aren't good or bad. It's just our legacy as an organization, but they have to be worked with and not worked around. By listening to the input, I feel like I've been trying to work around the cultural issues. I just need to kind of engage it where it is to find a solution that's durable.
Great. So we've got about 2 more minutes here in the open discussion. Gia, there's a few questions here. There's a question here from Betty. What's one thing you can do that's successful so that others can see to grab other people's attention?
That's a good question. I don't know that grabbing people's attention is the challenge. I feel like people are seeing the change, and they have a really good barrier to keep the change from coming into their department, into themselves, into the way that they operate. And it's not just this change. There's a whole range of changes. We're actually building a new strategic plan right now that I'm the project lead for. So I am seen as the person who's always kind of telling people what we're going to do differently, not just for my area, but for multiple areas. And I really feel like there's almost this kind of change barrier that comes up. Because it's easy to have change in the organization, but keep it from coming inside your own department. And I feel like that muscle is very strong.
Great. All right. So we're going to go into 1 minute of quiet reflection. This is our last quiet reflection. So what are some things coming up that perhaps that can almost be gifts that you can reflect back to Gia about how this situation, how what she shared, how that's landing? How is that making you feel? How is that making you think? What are some images or words that are coming up for you? And this is our final 5-minute discussion. Gia, you can turn off your camera. And just speaking as consultants, what's coming up for us? What's stuff that's there? Fatima, please.
Yeah. I think that either communication gap between Gia and the team and the CEO, and there is gap in expectations. Like what Gia is expecting is different from the what the CEO and the team were expecting. So I think there is a mismatch. Maybe if they could get the clarity on everything, like they should sit down and have and have a discussion and get the clarity on everything which is on Gia's mind. So Gia would say, I think this and this, and the organization will say we expect this and this, and they can clarify. I think, yeah, they got there.
Great. Who else?
So one of the things that comes to mind, I think, is really the bigger context. And sometimes when we're in the midst of change, it's really easy to sort of, or the midst of anything, any maybe challenging project at work, sometimes it's easier to see the challenges because that's what we're trying to overcome on a daily basis. But I would just encourage Gia to remember that change is hard and that leading change is really, really hard. And just to, while focusing on the challenges, don't forget to sort of think about your successes and celebrate them.
Great. See a question here from Brian about alignment, alignment within the organization, between the stories. It strikes me too, though, that there's this probably common experience that we have when we are, as an organization, let's just say below the line, whether it's crisis mode or it's sort of lurching from fire to put out, that it's really hard to develop any kind of visionary work. And I heard a lot of just, Gia, you just take care of it. I don't know anything about this, but you just take care of it because I don't have time to understand it because I'm underwater. Yeah. And how much and how often that happens to us in our organizational group life. Yeah. Sam, did you want to share what you've got here in the chat?
Thanks, Britt. Yeah, I just, I've been trying to think through the so many decisions that we've had to make as leaders. And I think not necessarily change-based, but even in simple decisions, we always encounter like similar experiences. And I think what has worked is usually just trying to be as transparent and also as situational as possible to be able to explain some of these decisions to everybody, of course, factoring in their perceptions, their beliefs, and so on. The social construction that we've been talking about, putting it in place, and practical reflections. And for me, I'm always reminded by one quote from one professor that I underwent, and he told us that for every successful organization, there's a leader who made a difficult decision. And I feel like Jay is in that position. We are in that position every day. And for every failed organization, there's a leader who did not make the right decision. So it is for Jay to choose between the two.
Great. Thank you, Sam. Okay, so we're at the end of part 2. We will invite Gia back in. And now we're going to part 3, which is our reflection on the process. So Gia, you'll begin. What did you discover from this process? And then after that, peer consultants, we can chime in. So go ahead, Gia.
It's been a very positive experience for me. What I discovered from this process is I had a more objective view of my impact, my intent versus my impact, kind of describing it to all of you as leaders who are not intimately involved in the situation. I think I can see where some assumptions that I've been using as shortcuts to kind of help me get through the work are actually where some of the problems lie. As in, the assumption that my boss and I have this understanding, and kind of leaning on that as a basis for kind of stepping out and doing other work. Learning that, to take another look at what I might see as a lack of collaboration or lack of engagement from my stakeholders. They're actually expressing how they feel, and I'm interpreting it in a certain way. And I need to kind of stop and think about that more deeply, and stop seeing it as an apples bananas situation, but really, back away from the technical fix and try to approach it a different way. So thank you.
Great. Thanks, Gia. So peer consultants, what did you discover as the result of this process?
I can go. Can I go?
Yes, go ahead, Jigasa.
I think one really huge learning for me was just the fly on the wall kind of situation that Gia was in when all of us were discussing. And I think I just felt how useful that space would be for teams, just in general, for brainstorming, for solving problems together, and assuming that role of being a fly on a wall at different times. I found that very powerful.
Great, thank you. Fatma, do you have your hand up? New hand up, or is that the old hand up? You can go if you want.
It's the old hand up, sorry.
Okay. So we have about 2 minutes left, and then we'll have about 3 minutes just to talk about the process. So 2 minutes left about what you took away from anything you may have learned in your own leadership or your own challenges you're facing.
Rick, can I just quickly make a comment about
Sure.
leadership?
Go ahead.
I think Sam, the comment that you made about successful leaders making right choices or difficult choices, I think I'm really starting to understand some of the internal tension I'm feeling is I feel that I'm being pushed to make decisions or lead from an executive director level, and that's not my space. I want to make sure, because of the nature of the organization, that I'm very respectful and I'm not overstepping my bounds. And I do feel like I continue to be pushed up, which smacks of disrespect because of the legacy of the organization. And it really is leading me to question how I'm going to continue to lead in a way that is comfortable and pleasant for me, but also effective to the organization and respectful of my peers. So it's a very interesting kind of thought process. Thank you.
Yeah, that's right, Gia. That's why I say the organization has a positive intention with you. They want you maybe one day to be the director. That's why they're giving you all those responsibilities. Yeah.
It's also, I think, an important example of how, as leaders, our actions have unintended consequences, where in this case, Gia's executive director believes that they are expressing perhaps some form of respect and appreciation for the things Gia can do, and therefore inviting her to join any number of things that may not be on her job description, perhaps from a place and intent of respect or appreciation. But one of the ways that sounds like it's being received is actually over time being felt as disrespectful, because it's saying, well, now you're taking my time away from doing what I'm being evaluated to do. And so again, as leaders, sometimes where we situate our intent is actually experiencing that impact in ways that we do not intend, right? And so my guess is that this executive director has no idea that that is actually how it's being experienced. And so this is an example when we do not have those perceptions that offer a more full perception. As leaders, we may continue to do things that we think are actually grounded in one thing, but are having the complete opposite impact on others and the teams that we work in. So I think that this is a really good example of that. So I want to thank you, Gia, for presenting this and sharing. We're going to be going back to the full group. And so we'll just have a few minutes in the full group to talk about the process. Jigyasa shared a little bit about how she experienced the process and how it can be beneficial in your own work, in your own leadership. But hopefully you had a chance to experience this at the meta level of this was only 50 minutes long, and the kind of learning and insight it can generate, especially if we are experienced with this, because you can see that you need your questions to be pretty tight, right? Each word matters in terms of how we share with each other, and making those questions something that is generative versus commentary, because sometimes our questions are more comments than real questions, right? So as all kinds of participants are from all places of participation, we can learn how to do this better. But you can see where you can generate some really powerful insight to get you from here to here in such a short period of time, right? And you don't need to have 8 people on a call. You could do that with just 2 others. And as you learn how to do this, and again, over Zoom, convening people is much easier, right? Where you can just say, hey, maybe do you have some time? Can we get together and just do a reflection discovery circle? Because I have this really challenging issue that I'm needing some additional perspective on. Yeah. Okay, I think Priti is going to suck us back into the full group. But if you do have any questions or thoughts that you want to explore, let's see, if Izumi's group's not done, we can do it in this group. But it looks like, well, if anybody has a question or comment right now before we get sucked out, knowing that we could just get ripped out of this conversation, but if you have a question or thought about the process, I'm happy to try and answer it in a short, economical way.
Can I make a comment, Britt? And I'll try to make this quick. 8 seconds. So Fatima's right. What I want and what the organization wants are different.